Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something a little bit different, a little bit special.
Yeah, this feels distinct.
It does. Usually we take this massive stack of articles, a whole library of research, and we boil it down to give you the lay of the land on a topic that's already out there.
Fully formed.
Fully formed, exactly. Okay. But today we are proving the power of a single phrase. We're operating in the realm of prediction, analysis, and what would you call it? Literary forensics.
I love that. Literary forensics. It's a fascinating case study, really. We're effectively trying to reconstruct a dinosaur from a single bone.
Yes. Or, in this case, reconstructing an entire narrative arc from just 3 words.
It sounds kind of impossible when you put it like that.
It does, but that's the mission. Just 3 words. We are looking at a stack of sources that are absolutely laser-focused on one specific, the upcoming 4th installment in Jenna Moreci Saviors. Now, for the fans listening, you know the weight. You know the intent, but for everyone else, this is a masterclass in how much weight a title can actually carry.
It really is. Sometimes a title is just a label. It's just, I don't know, The Mystery of the Old Clock or The Girl on the Train.
Right. It tells you what's in the tin, does what it says on the cover.
Exactly. But in high fantasy, and specifically in this series, our sources are telling us that titles are architecture. They are structural. They are load-bearing walls.
I love that image. That's a fantastic way to put it. If you pull the title out, the whole house just falls down.
Pretty much, yeah.
But before we even start, knocking on the walls and checking the foundation, we have to do a little bit of housekeeping, and this is a big one.
Okay.
I was looking through the source guide, specifically the section labeled The Phonetics of Moreci, and I had a bit of a moment. I realized I might be part of the problem here.
You and thousands of others, believe me, it is the classic fantasy reader's dilemma.
Is it? Okay, good.
Oh, absolutely. We see a name on a cover, we build a sound for it in our minds, and usually it's completely wrong.
It is. And then you live with that wrong pronunciation for years. It becomes comfortable.
It becomes your reality for that character, that author.
Yes. You see Moreci, and your brain, or at least my Anglophone brain, wants to do all sorts of things with. I want to say more.
I can see that.
I want to say morch, like it's Italian coughing.
Which sounds delicious, but as the guide points out, it's incorrect. And it's actually a crucial point of respect, I think.
It is. So what's the verdict?
The guide is very, very clear on it. The C in Moreci sounds like an S.
So it is Moreci, Jenna Moreci.
Moreci.
Yeah.
Wow. It flows differently when you say it right, doesn't it?
It does. It's softer. And honestly, it's just about respect, right? When you're deep diving into someone's world and the Savior series is this massive, sprawling labor of love, the absolute floor for entry is getting the creators. Absolutely. It's like walking into someone's house and calling them by the wrong name while you eat their food. You just wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't. So we're settled. Jenna Moreci.
Jenna Moreci. Okay. So now that we've established that, let's set the stage for where we actually are. This is unique for us.
It is.
We don't have a release date yet. We don't have a back cover blurb. We don't even have a stack of reviews to parse through. We are working with the ghost, the promise.
That's a very poetic way to put it, the ghost of the book.
Wait.
But we do have something tangible.
We do.
We have a title, and according to the analysis we have in front of us, specifically from the source, The Savior's War, Escalation and Consequence, this title is effectively a Rosetta Stone.
A Rosetta Stone. Okay, that feels ambitious, doesn't it? To claim that 3 little words unlock the direction of an entire saga.
It sounds ambitious, I know. It totally does. Until you look at the track record for this series. The source analysis points out very clearly that Moreci's titles aren't random. They're not just marketing. They consistently reflect the thematic core of each book. If you look at the previous book, the titles told you exactly what kind of story you were getting into.
So there's a precedent.
A very strong precedent. So if we accept that premise, that the title is a compass, then we can figure out exactly where the ship is heading, even if we can't see the destination yet.
All right, I'm sold. I'm on board. Let's look at the compass then. The newly confirmed title is The Savior's War. Just saying, it feels heavy. It lands with a thud.
It's incredibly heavy. And the source material highlights 3 specific pillars we need to look at to really understand that weight.
What are they?
Escalation, consequence, and this really interesting shift from the individual to the collective.
So this isn't just a marketing name. Our source is arguing it's a warning shot.
That's the perfect term for it, a warning shot.
A warning shot. I like that. So let's get right into the headline here. The first major segment of our analysis has to be the power of that one specific, not savior, not the, but war.
War. Yeah. It's a short word, just 3 letters, 1 syllable. But it does a tremendous amount of narrative work, especially in this context.
It seems obvious, though, right? I mean, it's a fantasy book. Usually there's a war somewhere in there. But the source is arguing that this specific use of the word right now, draws a line in the...
It's a demarcation line, 100%. Think about it this way. If you look at the source analysis regarding the previous book, what were the keywords? What was the vibe?
Okay, let me pull that up. I've got it right. The source describes the earlier books as focusing on, quoting, personal trial, political maneuvering, family dynamics, and competition.
Exactly. Now, really chew on those words for a second. Competition.
Yeah.
Dynamics. Maneuvering. What do those words imply about the environment the characters are living in?
Well, competition. Competition implies a game.
Yep.
Implies rules. There's a winner and a loser, sure, but there's a structure. You don't usually, I don't know, murder the referee in a competition.
Precisely. A competition has a referee. It has boundaries. What about political maneuvering?
Maneuvering implies that the court is still standing, the system is still in place. You are arguing in a council room, you're whispering in corridors.
The structure of civilization is intact.
Yes, exactly. It's intact. You're just trying to climb the ladder within it. It feels, I don't know, intimate, or at least somewhat controlled.
Controlled is the perfect word.
Like, even if people are dying, they are dying according to some kind of procedure or a duel or something, not just chaos.
That's it. Controlled is the key.
Yeah.
The analysis suggests that everything leading up to this point, all those previous books, were effectively preparation. They were the build-up.
I see where this is going. It's the training montage theory.
The training montage theory. I like it. Tell me more.
Yeah, you know, like in a boxing movie, you spend 45 minutes watching the guy run up the stairs, punch the meat in the freezer, chase the chicken around the yard. He's dealing with his drama with his brother. He's trying to get the girl. That's the personal trials and the competition there.
That is a surprisingly apt analogy. And we love that part of the story, right? We love seeing the competence being built. We love seeing the character level up their skill.
They do. But the montage has to end at some point.
It has to end.
Yeah.
And the Savior's War.
That's the bell ringing. That's round one.
That is the bell ringing for the actual heavyweight fight. And maybe not a boxing match with gloves and a ref, but a street fight with no rules.
Ooh, okay.
The source material is very specific about this shift. It says the conflict is no longer, and this is a quote, looming in the background.
That's a scary phrase, actually. Looming in the background.
Why do you say that?
Because it implies that for the last 3 books, while the characters were stressing about who said what at the dinner party or who won the tournament, the real threat was hovering, waiting.
It creates this sense of retrospective dread, doesn't it?
It does. You look back at the earlier books and you realize, oh, wow, while I was worried about this tournament, the apocalypse was gathering on the horizon.
And now, according to the text we have, it is unavoidable and all-consuming.
All-consuming. I want to unpack that word. Because unavoidable just means you have to deal with it. You can't run from it. But all-consuming? That means it eats everything else.
It eats the politics. It eats the family drama. It eats the romance. When a war becomes all-consuming, politics doesn't just disappear, but it becomes subservient to raw survival.
Right.
You aren't plotting to get a better seat at the table anymore. You are plotting to keep the table from being turned into firewood.
That's a terrifying distinction. It's a total paradigm shift. It reminds me of that old military adage, when the cannons speak, the diplomats are silent.
Exactly. We are moving from a state of, I don't know, Cold War or perhaps a proxy war or an internal power struggle.
To total war.
To total war. And total war, the source argues, actually changes the genre of the story.
A genre shift. That's a big leap. Are you saying we're leaving the political fantasy subgenre entirely behind?
I think we are seeing the natural and maybe violent evolution of. The source describes this transition as a move from preparation into consequence. And that word consequence is where the genre shift really happens.
Let's talk about consequence, because that sounds ominous. Usually in stories, we think of plot or action. Consequence feels like a punishment. It has a weight to it.
It is ominous.
Yeah.
And I think that's intentional. In literature, preparation is active.
Yeah.
It's empowering, right? You're gathering resources, you're learning skills, you're making alliances. It feels empowering in a way. You are getting ready.
You're in control.
You're in control. But consequence is reactive. The bill is coming due.
Oh, I like that. The credit card has been maxed out on politics and personal drama for 3 books, and now the bill is coming due.
And the interest is probably astronomical. Think about all those choices made in the political maneuvering phase. All those bridges burned or built during the family dynamics phase, now you have to pay for them. The war isn't just a random event that happens to the character. It is the culmination of those previous actions.
So if you made a mistake in book 2, maybe you insulted some minor noble, or you hesitated to kill someone you really should have,
Yeah.
That wasn't just a plot point for that chapter. That was a seed.
And in the Savior's War, that seed finally bloomed. And it probably blooms into something poison. If you insulted that noble, maybe his entire regiment doesn't show up when the city is being besieged. If you hesitated to kill that rival, maybe they're the one who opens the gates to the enemy army.
It raises the stakes so much more than just a random invasion. It's not just, can I win this tournament or can I outsmart this political rival? It's, can I survive the direct fallout of everything I've done up to this moment?
Precisely. It turns the character's own backstory into a weapon.
Or a liability.
A weapon that can be used again. And that leads us perfectly into the second major aspect of this title, which honestly I find even more fascinating than the war part.
And what's that?
It's the grammar.
Yes. Let's get granular. Let's get nerdy. We are obsessing over the word war, but the source material seems even more fixated on that little apostrophe.
The possessive.
It is the Savior's War.
That little apostrophe does a tremendous amount of narrative heavy lifting here. It implies ownership.
Ownership of a war. That is a heavy, heavy thing to own. But let me play devil's advocate for just a second.
Go for it.
Is it really that deep? Or is it just a cool sounding title? Maybe the War of the Savior just sounded clunky and the marketing team said, hey, let's just change it.
If this were a different author or maybe a looser narrative, I might agree with you. We could absolutely chalk it up to aesthetics.
Sure.
But looking at the deep analysis of Moreci's work, our source argues that nothing is accidental. And it explicitly states, and this is a really crucial quote, that the conflict is shaped by the Savior's choices, values, and moral compromise.
Shaped by, okay, that's not passive language. That implies agency.
Massive agency. Let's compare it to other famous fantasy titles, right?
Yeah.
Think about the War of the Ring.
Okay.
Or even historical things like the War of the Roses, or in another fantasy series, the War for the Dawn. In those titles, the war is an event. It's a storm. The protagonist is a participant, maybe even the leader, but they are fundamentally reacting to an external event.
Right. In the War for the realm is the main character, in a sense. Or at least it's the state. The hero is just the firefighter. The fire already exists, and they just show up to try and put it out.
Correct. But the Savior's War...
What's the difference?
The hero is the fire.
Oh.
Or at the very least, they're the arsonist.
That is a dark take. I love it. So you're suggesting the Savior isn't just fighting in the war, but that the war itself is a projection of their own internal issues.
The source notes this as the personal dimension. It suggests that the war is a mirror. If the Savior is chaotic, the war will be chaotic. If the Savior is ruthless and pragmatic, the war will be ruthless and pragmatic.
So it's the great man theory of history, but applied to a fantasy.
That's a great way of looking at it. It's not just that a great person influences history. It's that their personality becomes the very texture of conflict.
Which brings up the theme of leadership and responsibility that the source mentioning. Because if you own the war, you own every single death.
You own the casualties, you own the burned villages, you own the destruction. The burden is squarely and entirely on the Savior.
No one else.
No one. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. The source specifically calls out the phrase moral compromise. Now think about that in the context of possession, of ownership.
Moral compromise. So to win their war, a war they own, they have to compromise themselves. They have to chip away pieces of their own soul to get the victory.
And because it's their war, those compromises then shape the conflict itself. It creates this vicious feedback.
How so?
Well, the Savior makes a moral compromise to gain an advantage. Let's say maybe they sacrifice a village to save a city.
Which is a classic Savior, right?
It is. But because they made that specific choice, the nature of the war itself becomes dark. The enemy retaliates in kind. The allies start to mistrust them.
And so the Savior has to make an even worse compromise to fix the mess from the first one.
It's spiral. The war gets uglier because the Savior gets uglier, and the Savior gets uglier because the war gets uglier.
It really makes me wonder, and this is just me kind of riffing on the shaped by choices text here. Does the Savior own the war because they caused, or do they own it because they are the only one?
That is the ultimate question that the title poses, isn't it? And it leaves it deliberately, beautifully ambiguous.
How do you mean?
The Savior's war could mean the war that the Savior started.
Okay, the war of their own making.
It could also mean the war that the Savior must finish, the one that only they can resolve.
The burden they carry.
But either way you slice it, the agency, the responsibility, is placed 100% on the protagonist. This isn't a story about a hero getting swept up in events beyond their control.
No. This is a story about a hero driving the events.
And maybe driving them right off a cliff.
It shifts the genre. We aren't just in an epic fantasy anymore. It feels like we are in a character study that just happens to have armies.
A character study with a body count.
Yeah.
And usually, when you have a character study with a high body count, there's another word for that.
Which is?
A tragedy.
A tragedy. Well, that's a cheery thought for book 4, but it does segue perfectly into the next section, into the stake. Because if this is a war and if it's all-consuming, people are going to get hurt.
A lot of people. The source material is very clear on the trajectory here. It notes an upward trajectory from individual struggle to collective fate.
Let's break that down phrase by individual struggle to collect. Is that
Well, in the earlier books, as we've discussed, the struggles were personal, right? It was my survival, my family, my position at court.
right?
Even if the character failed spectacularly, the blast radius was relatively small. Maybe they got embarrassed or injured or exiles from the capital.
Right. It sucks for them, but the world keeps spinning. The farmer in the next valley over doesn't know or care if you lost the big tournament.
Exactly. But now, the source is saying it's the entire world's problem. The actions of the savior determine the collective fate.
Fate of everyone.
Everyone. So if the savior messes up in the savior's war, it's not just a personal embarrassment. Cities burn, nations fall. The blast radius has expanded to cover the entire map.
That pressure has to be absolutely crushing for a single character to bear. And there is a specific line in the source analysis regarding this pressure and the outcome that it's about victory.
I know exactly the line you're looking at. It's chilling.
It is. The source says, victory, if it comes, may carry a high cost.
Let's take the first part of that, if it comes.
If that is not.
It completely casts doubt on the happy ending, doesn't it? It suggests that victory is not guaranteed. We are so used to the trope in fantasy and genre fiction where the hero wins. It might be hard, it might be a struggle, but in the end, they win.
But that little if suggests that failure is a very real, on-the-table option.
A catastrophic failure. But then there's the second half, which I think is even more interesting, or, well, terrifying.
May carry a high cost.
And in fantasy literature, high cost usually doesn't mean money.
No, it rarely means gold coins. The Dark Lord does so.
No, he does not. High cost means limb. It means souls. It means friends. It means allies.
It means loss of innocence. It means loss of self. It's the spiritual and emotional cost.
And the source points to this directly. It mentions decisive moments that could redefine character. When you combine redefined characters with high cost, you start to see a very clear picture emerging.
What's the picture?
It's a picture of a protagonist who might win the war, but lose themselves completely in the process.
That goes right back to the possessive type. If it's the savior's war and they win it, who are they at the end of that? Are they still the savior?
Or have they become the warlord? Has the process of winning their war turned them into the very thing they were fighting against?
That is the central tension, the source quote. Wars in fantasy are rarely just about armies clashing. They test loyalties, expose flaws, and force characters to confront who they truly are.
And I want to focus on that phrase, expose flaws.
Okay.
In the competition phase of the earlier book, what do you do with your flaws? You hide them.
You hide them. You mask them to win. It's like a poker game. You bluff your way through. You can't show your tells.
But in a war, in a total all-consuming war, you can't bluff an artillery shell.
No, you can't.
War applies pressure. Massive, unrelenting hydraulic pressure. And under that kind of pressure, cracks spread. If a character has a fundamental flaw, say arrogance or hesitation or a tendency to trust the wrong people, the war will find that flaw and pry it wide open.
So the war itself acts as a mirror.
A funhouse mirror, maybe, that distorts and horrifies. But yes, the source is very blunt about this. It says, no one comes out of this unchanged.
Decisive moments that could redefine characters. It's not just that they'll be sadder or wiser. They might be fundamentally different people.
Unrecognizable, maybe.
It feels like we are painting a very, very intense picture here. But I guess that's what the source says we should expect. This is not going to be a cozy read.
No, this is not the book you read to relax before bed with a cup of tea. This is the book you read with the lights on, knowing it's going to hurt.
So let's try to synthesize all of it. We've torn apart the title, the grammar, the thematic, and the state. But what is the promise to the reader? At the end of the day, what does this title signal?
What's the takeaway?
If you are a fan of Jenna Moreci, if you've read the first 3 books and you are anxiously waiting for this book to drop, what is the Savior's War promise?
Based on our source, it promises 3 main things. First, and most obviously, large-scale conflict. We are done with the skirmishes. We are done with the duels and the Cold War. The map is going to change. Cities will fall. Armies will clash.
Okay. Big battles. Epic scope. Check. What's number?
Second, heightened emotional tension. Because the stakes are so personal and possessive, this isn't just about watching armies move like pieces on a board. It's about the savior's soul being on the line in every single one of those battles.
It's internal and external conflict happening at times.
And feeding each other.
Yeah.
And the third prompt, culmination.
Culmination. That implies payoff, doesn't it?
It does. A huge payoff. The source talks about the gradual buildup of power in the earlier books. That was the investment phase. The reader invested their time, their emotion, watching the savior grow, gather allies, learn the ropes. This book is the dividend.
But the dividend might be paid in blood and tears.
Almost certainly so. But it's the payoff nonetheless. You don't read thousands of pages of setup just to watch people talk in a room forever. You want to see what happens when the talking finally stops.
And the source also mentions the formation of armies in the past, which I thought, like That's something that happened in previous.
Right. And this goes back to Chekhov, right? The old writing advice. Chekhov's gun.
You can't put a gun on the wall in Act 1 if it's not going to go off in Act 3.
Exact. But in this case, it's Chekhov's army.
Army. I like that.
You can't spend 3 books meticulously forming an army, recruiting them, training them, arming them, and just put them on the mantelpiece to look at. They have to go to war. You don't build an army to let it sit in the barracks and play cards.
The chess pieces have been set for a long time.
The pieces are set, and the source says the Savior's War is when they all start moving. And because the conflict is unavoidable, they're all moving toward a massive collision in the center of the board.
It really highlights the emotional core of this upcoming book. The source calls it one of the most intense, dramatic, and transformative chapters yet.
And that word transformative is so key. It's the one that really sticks with me. It links everything back to the character. The characters aren't just enduring the war. They are being fundamentally transformed by it.
Like metal being transformed by fire and a hammer?
Exactly. It might come out stronger and more beautiful, or it might just break, but it will not be the same shape it was when it went in.
Title alone really acts as a signal flare for the reader that
What's the message?
Buckle up. The training wheels are off.
The training wheels are off and the brakes might be cut.
Great. Just what I needed to hear. The brakes are cut. Enjoy the ride down the hill. But seriously, it's exciting. Even with the dread, it's exciting. It's that feeling of arriving at the destination you've been traveling toward.
It creates a perfect blend of dread and anticipation, which honestly is the sweet spot for a penultimate or climactic book in a series. You want the reader to be almost scared to turn the next page, but completely unable to stop themselves.
So let's wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground based on just 3 little words. Let's try to summarize what we've unpacked from this title and from this analysis.
Okay, the big picture. We've moved from the era of politics, preparation, and personal trial. The game has changed.
We have crossed the line into an all-consuming, unavoidable war.
And it's not just any war. It is, crucially, the Savior's War. It is personal, it is possessive, it is shaped by the protagonist's choices, values, and flaws.
And it is likely to be incredibly costly. The narrative has shifted from preparation to consequence. The
title is a warning of escalation. It's telling us that everything that came before was just the prologue to this main conflict.
Precisely. The prologue is over. The main event is starting. Now, we always like to leave you with something to chew on. A final provocative thought based on what we've discussed.
A little homework.
We've been circling this idea of the savior shaping the war. We've talked a lot about moral compromises and consequence.
And that idea of ownership.
Yeah.
That it is their war.
So here is the question we want to leave you with. If the war is shaped by the savior's value, is the savior actually fighting the world? Or are they fighting to save themselves from the consequences of their own rise to power?
Wow. Is it a war for salvation or a war for their own survival?
Ooh, that is the question, isn't it? Because if it's just for their own survival, does that make them the villain of some?
It very well might. And that is the beauty and the terror of a complex title.
We'll have to wait for the book to find. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Jenna Moreci's world.
Keep reading.
And we'll see you next time.